Hi, this will be the first in a series of videos that show in detail how I go from an enclosure like this to a finished one like this each step of the way. I'll say right off the bat that I'm mainly a professional software programmer and that making enclosures was something that I had to teach myself. I make this pedal in small batches, so it's not cost effective for me to outsource having the enclosure built by someone else. So much of the effort ends up being a hands-on process that I do here in my shop. I can break the process down into 5 parts. First, using a benchtop drill press for making holes. Then using a benchtop vertical mill for making rectangles. Then using a powder coating gun and oven to create the finish. Then silk screening on the artwork. And then the final assembly. For this first video, I'll just be talking about using the drill press for making the holes, as well as the countersink detail around each LED light. So my goal will be to set up a temporary jig on the drill press table using these clamps and blocks, so that each hole that I need to make can be accurately repeated 25 times. First step is taping the template I made to one of the enclosures. Once I'm satisfied that the template is secured, I'll use this punch to make the smallest indent at the center of each hole. One firm hit is all that's needed to make the indentation. Hitting it too hard can warp the face of the enclosure. Having a scrap enclosure handy lets me test out the amount of force needed. This accomplishes 2 things. First, it's really easy to do this accurately, and the indentation helps the drill bit find the correct mark for setting up the alignment. Second, while I try to keep the template taped to the first enclosure the entire time, should it fall off halfway through the process, I can continue going by using only the indentations. Here I'm lifting the enclosure up to the drill bit and gliding it around until the bit gets seated into the indentation. Then I lower the whole thing down to rest on the table using the bit to keep the enclosure in place. Now I carefully add the first block to the side of the enclosure and clamp it down. The second block added creates a corner that I can set each enclosure into. Now I can make the pilot hole and repeat that process for each enclosure. Don't forget about proper drill press safety, eyewear, hearing protection, and no articles of loose clothing. I haven't done anything to prep these next enclosures. There's no template, no center punches. I just rely on the jig that I've built to make the hole in the right place. Cleaning up with a shop vac frequently will help me avoid putting any scratches on the surface of the enclosure. Adding some WD-40 to the drill bit when repeatedly making holes doesn't hurt either. Now to get the hole the size I need for the foot switch, I'll change to this Uni-Bit. These are great for drilling holes in die cast enclosures, taking out just enough material as you move down one step at a time. Just be sure that there's enough depth below the surface of the enclosure to accommodate the bit as you drill down, or you might accidentally bite into the table. I've already determined that I need to drill down 6 steps for the foot switch hole. However, this being the first time I've used the Uni-Bit in a while, I proceed more cautiously until I get the feel of it drilling down each step. I can always make the hole bigger, but I can't add any metal back to it. Now that I'm feeling more comfortable, the next enclosures I can drill in a single pass. Repeating that process, I've now drilled out all of the holes for all 25 enclosures. Next, I like the look of having a small bevel around the LEDs. So to make that bevel, I just need to use this countersink bit. I already have the hole for the LED drilled, so that'll act as my pilot hole, and I don't really need to go through the process of setting up a jig for this. It's such a simple task that all it takes is lining up the bit with the hole that's already there, holding onto the enclosure while the countersink is made. I should point out that it's always recommended to clamp the item down on the table before drilling, and I'm violating that rule here. With all that done, I'm going to call it a day in the shop. Join me for the next video, and I'll use the benchtop vertical mill to cut out the rectangle for the LCD screen.